Well, today we have a very special interview. We have Richard Gamble from Sports Chaplaincy, America and all over the world. Richard, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing really well, thank you. Doing really well.
Excellent. Now, Richard, you're involved with Sports Chaplaincy. For many of our viewers who may not be familiar with this, what is Sports Chaplaincy?
Sports Chaplaincy is the provision of pastoral care and spiritual care for professional and amateur sports people. So it's basically putting somebody into a club or a sporting environment where people can be cared for, and the sports chaplain is really a listening ear, somebody who can be there independently for the sports person. It's a very machoistic environment. It's a very insecure environment, and people are performance focused. So they generally don't open up to people who are going to make a decision on their future. And so what chaplaincy does is we're just there to go in and be a listening ear and show the love and compassion of Jesus while we're doing it.
Fantastic, Richard. Now let's take things back. Where did it all begin? How did you get involved with Sports Chaplaincy?
Well, I went to a game where Leicester City played Stoke. I was a big Leicester City fan, and we needed to win the game to stay in the Championship. Would you believe, considering what we've done in the last season? But
yeah.
And we drew, and it was like a mass funeral. It was the most depressing environment I've ever been in, and I bumped into the chaplain who was there and just said hello and just encouraged him and told him he was doing a good job. And then I went home and I was really gutted that Leicester had got relegated to League One, and tearful, and I was just praying, and I said, Lord, this is just ridiculous. I am letting a game of football rule my emotions. And I just felt God speak to me really clearly, and he said, I've given you this passion for a purpose. And I think it was 2 or 3 days later, I got an email from the chaplain just saying, could I pray, because he was going to move to South Africa, and we needed to find a new replacement. And as soon as I read it, I knew that was for me.
Wow, I mean, faith is something that we all deal with, and I'm a Crystal Palace fan, so I also am on faith as well very much during the football season. So I know you're supporting Leicester as well. Now tell me a little bit about the importance of sports chaplaincy and working with the football players, because fundamentally that's what it's about, isn't it? Working with football players.
Yeah, I mean, you're there for the players, and you're there for the backroom staff, and you're there for the administration staff. And I think football is such a difficult environment. If you're a player and you play poorly one game, you're gonna get hammered. You're gonna get 30,000 people on your back, and it may risk your future career. And what people don't realise is that players are human beings. They have arguments with their wives and their partners. They have the storms of life like everybody else, and they have to learn to cope with those storms and not let it affect their performance. And what we're there to do as chaplains is really help those players when those storms come. We build relationship with them, and so when a storm comes, then they'll say, well, can you help me? And they've got somebody who will talk it through with them and support them. Because again, and particularly at the elite level, it's very difficult for them to know who to trust. People have often got an angle of why they want to be involved with a star, and they almost want the glory to rub off on them, of being involved with somebody famous. And again, we've got to be above all that as chaplains and just be there for the individual. So when I would go into a club, I wouldn't be asking the player about how he's playing. I wouldn't be talking to them about the game that went before or anything like that. I'd be asking questions like, how's your family doing? How's life at home? And that way you build a different type of relationship, and they realise that you're not there because they've scored a goal at the weekend. And that also changes the way that you go in, because you're not just talking to the player who scored a goal. You're also talking to the player who's not been selected. You're talking to the player who has been injured for 6 months and probably his career is going to end. You're talking to the academy lads, some of them who will never become professional footballers. You're talking to the groundsman. You're talking to the finance lady and the guy at the ticket office. Chaplaincy is there for everybody at the club, and even though those who are not playing actually have quite a unique job, in that for some of them the success of their job is largely at the hands of how well the team does, and for some in administration that's beyond their control. And it's difficult for somebody who's probably earning in a year what somebody else is earning in a week, for them to get their heads around that. So there's loads of unique issues really in sport, and I believe it is a mainly unreached area for Christianity, and there's a history of church really over recent decades trying to separate itself from sport, whereas I believe we need to get stuck in and support and help people.
Hello there, I'm Alan Birchinall, better known to everybody as The Birch. I am Leicester City Club Ambassador, and I've been asked to say what Richard Gamble, our club chaplain, does for our football club. To tell you the truth, I haven't got a clue.
I think sometimes, given the culture of professional football, where performance is everything, and sometimes it's hard for players, if they've got an issue or a problem or a concern, to actually speak to people, given that people may be judging them on what they say, and that may then lead to whether a player is selected or what people maybe think of them. So I think that the Rev's role is vitally important, in that if a player's got something that they want to say in confidence, that they can go and speak to them.
If anybody had a problem and they didn't feel they could talk to somebody at the club, I think that he's the link.
Well, I've never come across a chaplain before, the clubs I've been at before, but what I see the chaplain do here is sort of bring, a bit of a, good vibe around the training ground, always smiling and always in a good mood, very approachable. I guess he's a person that you can talk to who just, makes you think about something else than football, because it can be sometimes a bit stressful.
I think the chaplain is like a person that when you're down, is someone that you can come and turn to and ask any questions, and he'll always be there for you.
I guess the role of a chaplain, from what I understand, would be for those more religious lads to approach a person and sort of talk about that, really.
I think a chaplain in a football club is very important. It's an opportunity, if we need it, to have some guidance in times of trouble when our private lives are not going well. It's always nice to have somebody around that can help us with that.
We have lads that have spiritual needs, and I feel that Richard is more than able to meet those and talk to the lads on that level. I work in partnership with Richard. I feel that he offers the club a different dimension, really. We have a very good welfare structure within the academy.
Plays a very important role at the football club. You know that we have a one-off memorial garden down at the Walkers Stadium, and is integral in, along with Pat Griffin and myself, in keeping that running.
How easy is it for you to get the trust from these players and for them to be able to release or talk about the situations in their private lives?
Yeah, it varies, and listen, you know, particularly at the elite level now, you know, there are a wide range of support mechanisms, of which chaplaincy is one. So I don't want to sort of give the impression that we're the be all and end all here. And for some players, you never get their trust, and that's just the way it is. And you know, there'd be a couple of players, I'd walk in and you could see the door flapping as soon as I walked in somewhere. A couple of players, they're gone. And that's probably because of their preconceptions of what church is and what religion is. Some players open up straight away because they've had a good experience of chaplaincy in a previous club. And then some of the players, it just takes time. I mean, I remember one player, you know, he said to me, he said, look, I don't really think that first teamers will use chaplaincy. I can't really see the point, and I think the academy lads would, but nobody in the first team. And I was like, well, okay, that's fine. I mean, the fact was at the time he was with my family, with his family in our house, having a meal together. But, I was like, okay. But that's because he had a different view of what chaplaincy was. But then a year later, he then called me to one side and sort of said, actually, I've got this situation, can you help me with it? And then another year later, he called me to one side and said, could you actually just sit down and explain the gospel to me?
Wow.
So these things take a lot of time and a lot of patience, and it sounds a great job. And listen, I was a Leicester City fan. Sacrificed that fandom when I got involved, but it was a dream job to be on the inside. Fantastic, wonderful experience, but it is difficult because you are hanging about like a lemon a lot of the time. You know, and people have got a job to do, and what are you doing? You just go in one day a week, just hanging about, saying hello to people. And
now it's interesting, Richard, because you say you're a Leicester City fan and you had the dream job. How easy was it for you to actually be speaking to these players who you watch day in, day out, and you know these are your, in a way, you look up to some of these players because they can score the match-winning goals for you, and they can be the result of your team staying in the division or going down or anything else like that. You're looking up to these players. How easy was it for you to actually talk to these players?
That's a good question. Well, the chaplain who was looking at who could take over took me down the training ground one day, just on a Saturday to watch the academy, and then you've got some players, you know, who have not been selected, and they came up and had a little chat, and that for me was the big test. Can I cope with this? And it just, you know, it was fine, and I managed to just sort of chat to them and be relaxed, and really for me over time, I found that I became, in a strange way, less passionate about the team and the performance of the team, and more passionate about the individuals.
Yeah. Because the football game it's got its very, very highs and very, very lows. At one point, you've scored the match-winning goal. Thousands of fans, millions of people are watching you all over the world, and you're on top of the world. But then dealing with the disappointment, and especially look at some of the young players who are coming into the game now. How do you speak to them? How do you communicate with them to deal with disappointment or being dropped from the team or not making it into the first team each week?
Yeah, I mean, the academy is a really good example because of those players where you've got about 20 players in a season, and maybe 3 or 4 of those might get offered contracts. And I think the stat is something like 60% of academy players never play football again. They're so disillusioned with it, they never kick a ball. So you've got that time where some young lad who has always dreamed that he's going to be a professional footballer realises it's not going to happen, and that is difficult. And you have to talk to them about there's much more to life than the game, and also encourage them that, okay, they may not make it in a professional game, but maybe they make it in the semi-professional, and try and encourage them to keep playing. And those are difficult conversations. I don't think they ever get any easier, and difficult for young lads to get their heads around that.
I think the chaplain is very important in the club because he helps people to talk about everything. If you have any trouble, you can come and talk to him, and he can help you about anything.
I think chaplaincy is important at the club because Richard is here to help. He doesn't question you. He's more than happy just to listen to any issues that any staff members may have.
Now, unfortunately, when I was playing, I had a serious injury which put me out for a number of months, and eventually ended my career. And even though I'm not a religious person myself, the chaplain here at the time, Bruce, was a real good source of unconditional support. He would come in every week, ask how things were going. It was just a chance to have a chat and talk to someone who didn't have a decision to make on your future about how you're feeling. And you felt like you could be really honest with him.
He's always there for the lads. He meets them on a one-to-one basis or on a group basis. And, players sometimes, particularly lads that are living away from home and are in the digs, may go through a time where they're homesick, or they might have problems at home, either with parents or any family members, and sometimes they don't want to approach us as a full-time member of staff, and obviously then the chaplain is a great link for them, and they know that they can go and see in confidence and discuss any off-the-field problems that they have.
And obviously inside the dressing room you must have a variety of different religions, nationalities and religions, people from different faiths. So what has their reaction been, if they're non-Christian players, for example, what has their reaction been towards you? Have you had non-Christian players coming up to you and asking you for advice?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would say you're in my 3 years at Leicester, I think there was one Christian player and one Christian coach. And so you're predominantly dealing with people who don't have a belief. What was interesting to me and quite surprising was that Muslim players would approach you. And that's because a lot of people, when they talk about multi-faith, and they're like, well, you need a Christian chaplain, a Muslim chaplain, and all those, which obviously wouldn't work. But to have 19 different faith chaplains in a football club is ridiculous. But what's interesting is that those players who have a faith, one who had a Buddhist faith, one who was a Muslim, they connect with you because you understand spirituality. And they enjoy having those discussions because those wouldn't take place with their fellow players. So, I've had Muslim players that came to my Bible studies and were even twisting the scriptures, which I find difficult to get my head around.
Now, just tell me, we obviously see examples of football players who freely share their faith. When they've scored a goal, they give the glory to Christ. Kaká comes to mind, David Luiz comes to mind, other players. We don't see many football players, sportsmen who are very open with their faiths on television or during their playing career. Maybe after their playing career has ended, they'll speak out. Could that be because of the sponsorship deals that they're under and the pressures that they don't want to offend anybody? What do you think?
I think in the society that we live in, I think there's a great challenge in high-profile individuals sharing their faith. And my advice to any player and any individual would be, I think you have to get to a certain maturity in your faith before you're ready to share it publicly. And we've seen many times where individuals have been maybe pushed down that route too early, and and it's caused lots of challenges and stuff that's not really been glorifying to God. I think it's far better when those players are sharing their faith in the dressing room and sharing with their faith with the people around them, as opposed to doing public proclamations. I mean, I was talking about this last night with somebody who was, they were running through these players who they've seen cross themselves and do all sorts of stuff on the pitch, and then I've been aware of them off the pitch and think, well, I'm not really sure where their faith is at because of some of the things that they may do. So I think you have to be pretty strong, pretty mature, with a good support behind you and a clear call from God to be outwardly public.
Now, you say you've got 400 chaplains in the UK. What about internationally, outside the UK, Europe and the rest of the world?
Yeah, well, this is the thing that I'm developing now with Seed Sports, and we are developing a worldwide registry to actually link all the sports chaplains in the world. Because one of the challenges is that sports chaplaincy is sort of developed organically and perhaps is not as professional as we would like it to be globally. So we think estimates that there's between 7,000 to 10,000 chaplains across the world. But we are seeing, significant growth, and more countries are getting on board with the approach. And interestingly, even some countries that you would expect to be hostile to the gospel are trying to bring in chaplaincy to provide support to their athletes. So that's a great encouragement. And I can only, for me, I just think it's a move of God. It doesn't sort of make any sense in the fact that, in places where, I mean, the UK is a great example. In a place where, people are now getting reprimanded for wearing a cross in the workplace, and yet we have professional sporting associations financially supporting and promoting chaplaincy. Yeah, it's an anomaly, but I believe God's on the move, and we are seeing now great strides being made for chaplaincy, not just in football, in all sports. The Olympics, particularly, we're seeing progress in Paralympics and progress in women's sport.
You're in a project called the Prayer Wall. Explain us a little bit about what is prayer and what is the prayer wall.
Okay, well, what is prayer? Prayer is a conversation with God. A time where I can just talk to Him and talk through the challenges and be very open and honest with Him. And He listens to me and He answers. And it's that simple. And what we're trying to do with the Wall of Answered Prayer is to reflect that Jesus is alive today. He's not a myth or something that was cooked up 2,000 years ago. He is alive, and we can talk to Him today.
God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine, or guess or request in your wildest dreams. 13 years ago, God gave Richard a vision to build a wall. This vision was like no other. The wall would be a piece of architecture that would become a national icon, demonstrating to the world that Jesus answers prayer. What started as a vision, today is becoming a reality.
And the concept is that it will be 1,000,000 bricks, and every brick is going to represent an answered prayer. We want to build it by a motorway so that literally tens of thousands of people are going to see it every day. Each and every element of this sculpture is going to represent a story where Jesus has intervened in somebody's life.
I had to go through a major operation where I had 50% chance of dying, but thankfully after praying I made it.
I had insomnia for nearly 2 years, and then some people prayed for me and I was healed by Jesus.
I was lost and empty, and I didn't think I had a purpose in life, but then I prayed to Jesus and he gave me dreams and hopes.
My mom was diagnosed with malignant cancer. I prayed to Jesus and my mom is healed today.
My hope for the future is for those individuals who have no interaction with church, but still there'll be a route for them to find the God who answered. For every brick that is built in the wall of answered prayer, we're also going to put another brick into social housing. So we're going to provide 1 million bricks of social housing, which should build about 100 houses, and that will be both in the UK and worldwide.
I'm going to share my story.
I'm going to build the wall.
I'm building the wall.
You know, my vision is this, that in 150 years' time, just like we've got the Angel of the North, people will drive past this piece of architecture, and I'm hoping that somebody in a car or whatever vehicles we're in those days, well, I won't be there in 150 years, but you know, that somebody will say, do you know what, my great-grandfather has got a brick in their wall, and this is what Jesus did for him. And it's a way for people to share their faith, and people will be able to go and you know, maybe somebody in their family's just been diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, and they'll be able to go to that wall and type in cystic fibrosis and see how many tens of thousands of people have had the same experience, but Jesus has answered their prayer and supported them. So I think it's a tremendous opportunity for us.
Fantastic. And Richard, if they want more information on the prayer wall, where do they need to go?
Yeah, very simple. We just ask people to go to thewall.org.uk, and we want to capture your stories. So if you've got a story where you prayed and Jesus has answered, we'd like to hear it. And that may be a massive thing, it may be a small detail, but we want to capture those stories so that we can share them through the generations.
Excellent. Richard Gamble, thank you so much indeed for joining us today. Take care and God bless.
You're welcome.